Welcome to Curio Flux. We live in a world that's just defined by scarcity. From the time we have in a day to the money in our bank accounts, we're constantly making choices about these limited resources. But what if scarcity isn't just about what we have? What if it's really about what it does to us? Today, we're going to unpack the science of scarcity.
Do you remember the Cabbage Patch riots of 1983? People were literally trampled in the rush to get a doll. It's wild. Or how about something a little more recent? The Great Toilet Paper Panic of 2020, where shelves were just stripped bare all over the world. These moments, when you look back, they seem so baffling, right? Almost absurd. But they reveal this incredibly powerful, primal trigger that's hardwired deep inside our brains, the fear of not having enough. This isn't about logic. It's a deep, deep psychological response to even just the idea of scarcity.
So how in the world do we get from a simple economic idea to a full-blown Cabbage Patch riot? Well, today we're going to cover the fundamental rules of scarcity. Then we'll see what it actually does to our brains. After that, we'll explore how brands create a scarcity gold rush. And finally, we'll uncover the digital traps designed to exploit our deepest instincts. So let's dive right in.
Okay, to understand the chaos of a toilet paper aisle, we've got to start with something much quieter, much simpler, a single decision. Because at its very core, scarcity is an economic concept, and it shapes every single choice we make, whether we realize it or not.
The first rule of scarcity is this thing called opportunity cost. Now, that might sound a little technical, but it's an idea you live with every single day. Put simply, the cost of any choice isn't just the cash you spend. It's the value of the next best thing you couldn't do. So choosing to buy that coffee means you're giving up the opportunity to save that money or maybe buy a snack instead. Every yes is also a no to something else.
Let's make this really concrete with a super simple example. Meet Alfonso. He is facing a classic budget problem. He's got $10, and with that $10, he has to choose between two things he values: burgers and bus tickets. The scarcity here is crystal clear. His budget is limited. He is absolutely forced to make a trade-off. And this slide really nails that opportunity cost. The math is pretty straightforward, but the implication is huge. For Alfonso, the true cost of one burger isn't $2. It's the 4 bus tickets he has to give up to get it. This simple trade-off, that's the engine of scarcity. But this kind of pressure doesn't just exist on paper. It actually gets inside our heads. And this brings us from that simple choice to a really powerful psychological force. We're shifting gears now from the world of economics to the inner world of cognitive science. Because, you see, the most dramatic effects of scarcity aren't on our wallets, they're on our minds. So back in 2013, a team of researchers published this landmark study in the journal Science with this really powerful hypothesis. They weren't just saying that poverty is stressful, we kind of knew that. They were suggesting that the very condition of having too little, that constant mental juggling of managing scarce resources, acts like a tax on our brain power. It literally reduces our ability to think clearly. So to test this idea, they ran this fascinating experiment at a New Jersey mall. They stopped shoppers, got some basic income info, and then asked them to think about a hypothetical money problem. Half of them got an easy one, a surprise car repair bill for $150. The other half got a hard problem, a whopping $1,500 bill. Now, while the shoppers were just thinking about how they'd handle this, they were given some cognitive tests.
And the results were pretty striking. For the well-off folks, it didn't really matter which problem they got. Their cognitive scores were about the same. But look at the lower-income participants. On the easy problem, they performed just as well as the rich. But when they were simply asked to think about that tough $1,500 problem, their performance on the cognitive tests dropped a lot. The mental burden of just imagining a big financial hit was enough to diminish their brain function in real time.
But the researchers didn't stop there. To really confirm this link, they traveled all the way to India and studied sugarcane farmers. And what's so unique about these farmers is that they experienced this cycle of poverty. They're pretty poor right before the harvest, struggling to make ends meet, but right after the harvest, when they get paid, they're flush with cash. So the researchers tested the exact same farmers at both points in time. And the results from this one were just staggering. Before the harvest, when money was tight, the farmers' performance on cognitive tests, like these Ravens IQ matrices, was significantly lower. After the harvest, when they were financially secure, their scores went up dramatically. This revealed this crucial insight.
Scarcity isn't just a lack of stuff, it's a tax on our mental bandwidth. It eats up our attention and leaves less capacity for everything else, problem solving, impulse control, you name it. And this vulnerability, well, it can be exploited.
All right, so knowing that scarcity can hijack our brains and make things seem way more valuable, it was really only a matter of time before businesses figured out how to create it on purpose. This isn't about meeting demand anymore. It's about manufacturing desire literally out of thin air.
And the undisputed master of this entire strategy has got to be the streetwear brand Supreme. An item that sells for, say, $100 in their store can be worth $500 or more just minutes later on the resale market. How is that possible? By turning scarcity itself into the product.
Supreme's playbook is really a masterclass in psychological marketing. They release a tiny number of items in these drops, which makes them instantly scarce and feel super exclusive. This creates this perception of insane value. They don't need huge ad campaigns because they've built a community that does the marketing for them. That crazy resale market, it actually helps the brand, adding to its legendary status. And through clever collabs, they generate a massive fear of missing out. You know, FOMO, which is the emotional engine that drives all of this.
Some research in the sneaker world actually breaks this down into two main types. First, you've got supply scarcity, which is exactly what Supreme does. A product is desirable because the company deliberately limits the supply. Then there's demand scarcity, where something becomes desirable because it feels like everyone else wants it. It's that snowball effect you see when a product just blows up and goes viral. Both of them lead to an empty shelf, but the psychology behind them is just a little different.
So these same principles have now migrated from physical stores into our everyday digital lives. These concepts that used to be for things like retail drops are now being weaponized at a massive scale online, subtly engineering our choices every single time we browse the web. I am sure you have seen this before. You're trying to book a hotel, and all of a sudden this urgent message pops up. Your heart rate might speed up a little, you feel this sudden pressure to act right now. This isn't just helpful info, it is a carefully designed tactic to trigger your scarcity response and rush you into a decision before your rational brain can even catch up.
This is a classic example of something called a dark pattern. And the term refers to any user interface that's been specifically crafted to trick users into doing things they might not otherwise do, like buying insurance they don't really need or signing up for recurring bills without realizing it. It's basically the digital version of a high-pressure salesperson, but it's built right into the website's code.
And these traps come in all sorts of flavors. You've got misleading scarcity, which by the way can sometimes be completely made up. Partitioned pricing is that sneaky trick where airlines show you a low base fare and then tack on all the fees at the very last step. And then there's unfair ranking, where booking sites might show you hotels not based on what's best for you, but on who pays them the biggest commission, a little detail they don't always make obvious.
And the scale of this can just be immense. I mean, take Amazon's buy box. That's the main offer you see on a product page. An estimated 80 to 90% of all sales on Amazon happen through that one button. Now, investigations have alleged that Amazon's algorithm for deciding who wins that buy box can unfairly favor its own products. This isn't about scarcity of product, but scarcity of choice and attention, using a powerful default to steer billions and billions of dollars in spending.
At the end of the day, scarcity is so much more than just a condition of our lives. It's a powerful force that can be used to influence us. It narrows our focus, it taxes our cognitive bandwidth, and it makes us vulnerable. So the next time you feel that urgent pull from a limited time offer or a low stock warning, it's really worth just taking a second to pause and ask yourself, am I making a genuine choice here, or is it just the scarcity talking?